Hi guys! Today I'm gonna tell beginners how to play scales. I will give some reasons to play scales and tell you why they are important if you want to play the violin. I will show you the most common bad habit that every beginner has. If you don't manage to get rid of it, you will never be able to play in tune. Well, if you've just started playing the violin, you need to start with a one-octave scale. There is no point in starting out with a 2, 3 or 4 octave scale. It has no sense. First of all, your goal should be to master no more than two one-octave scales, two different scales. Let me show you. I strongly recommend beginners, kids or adults start practicing D major scale, one octave scale, in different ways. You should start with a slow tempo, one note per bow. Use a wide bow stroke. D major key has two sharps F and C. It's vitally important to keep in mind that both F and G, F sharp with the second finger, the second finger is near the third finger. The same thing is when C sharp is near the third one. Consequently, we can easily and naturally fit all the fingers when playing D major scale. There is a whole tone now between the first and the second fingers, and a half tone between the second and the third fingers. You should practice the scale thoroughly until your fingers are confident. This scale can help you work on your proper left-hand posture. Now, let's do the scale with two notes per bow. I want to show you a quite helpful method, which is called a long tonic. Let me explain that. The first note, D, has to be played twice longer than other notes. We play D with the whole bow, and we end up at the top of the bow. Other notes we play dividing the bow into two. When we come to D, we play it with the whole bow and end up at the bottom of the bow. Then we play it further, beginning from this part of the bow. Then we are gonna slur two notes, but the long tonic doesn't change. So that's a separate D, we use the whole bow here. Pay attention to the bow distribution. You have to use the entire bow in this exercise. Then we have to play one long tonic and three notes on a bow. Play the scale in these ways a lot of times in a row, thoroughly. Once you are done with D major scale, you can move on to A major scale. A major scale doesn't differ much from the D major scale. There are three sharps in A major scale: F sharp, C sharp and G sharp. The fingerings are the same as in D major scale. C sharp and D is a half tone. G sharp and A is a half tone as well. In both D and A major scales, when using the second and the third fingers, we have a half tone between them. First of all, you need to play the scale in this way. One note on a bow, then two notes on a bow. Then, play the scale with the long tonic, as I mentioned a minute ago. I advise beginners not to be rushing when working on the scales. Work on them thoroughly, for a long time, along with working on your repertoire. All music we play consists of scales. Arpeggios and double stops are scales as well. You need to work on them in the future. As an example, I will be playing a Russian folk song from a kid's methods book. You might have noticed that's D major scale itself. If you practice on this scale, it won't be difficult to play this piece of music at all. Having practiced D major and A major scales, you are ready to play a one-octave G major scale. They are almost similar. We use the same fingering in this case. The position of the fingers is exactly the same. Play it in different ways, one note per bow, two notes per bow. Play it with a long tonic. Afterwards, you can start practicing a two-octave G major scale. Keep playing A open string, it's vitally important to understand that G major key has one sharp. There is neither G sharp nor C sharp in the key. That means that the first and the second fingers are placed next to each other on A string. In D major and A major scales, these two fingers create a whole tone, and the second and the third ones create a half tone. In G major scale, when we come to the second octave, here the first and the second fingers are placed next to each other. That's a new position for the left hand for the fingers, so the position needs practicing thoroughly. Consequently, you can start playing from the third finger on D string, that's note G. Practice the octave on its own. It is in C sharp, that's C natural. It is placed next to the first finger. That's F sharp and that's G natural. Place them together. and down. Keep in mind that we haven't used the fourth finger in this scale so far. We use 1, 2, 3 and open strings. We will be using the fourth finger once we've mastered the scale. We do it for the pure intonation. Since we have the open strings, and it isn't necessary to involve the fourth finger, let's move on to the most common mistake every beginner makes, I mentioned at the beginning of the video. In order to play in tune, we need to listen to ourselves carefully and control all motions. A wide range of violinists, from kids to adults, play in a hurry, so they lose control on the intonation, particularly in the first interval, especially when the scale begins with an open string. If the violin is in tune, it's easier to build the first interval of the scale. Play it once with the bow down. The quality of the following intonation completely depends on how accurately you play the second degree of the scale. If you neglect it, everything is gonna be a disaster. Obviously, out of tune. Despite the fact that all the notes in the relation to one another are kind of in tune, in the relation to the first degree on the scale open string, they are rubbish. So, you always should keep an eye on the first intervals you play. As you start playing a scale, repeat it several times. D, E, D, E. You may help yourself with your voice. Try playing that in your head or play this interval on piano. This interval, the distance between the notes. I think it's time to play the scale. Otherwise, you will get too used to playing out of tune and that won't be bothering you. You'll be placing your fingers higher. And you may think that's not bad, or lower. I hope you got it. As we work on technique issues every day, we need to clean the intonation. It's a waste of time to work on developing speed, technique, and so on, when we have unsolved intonation problems. That's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it helpful. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe the channel and hit the bell button for more videos.